I want to begin, ladies and gentlemen, by welcoming you all here tonight and reflecting on what it is to be a human, one of this marvellous mammal species on this magnificent little planet of ours, and to reflect blessed on that by honouring the Indigenous people whose place this is and whose planet this is and whose philosophy, with humility, we need to re-embrace for our sakes as well as for all the other creatures on this planet. I was in Melbourne just a couple of weeks ago reflecting on the planet, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But first, I want to thank those who got us into this little hidey hole on the planet tonight and to this conference. Now, I wanted to talk at the outset about this greening of politics. It's been going on for 3 or 4 decades now around the planet. Petra Kelly, the great German Green, when she came to Australia and then on to Tasmania in 1984, and she sat at the hearth with me in Liffey, was saying, Bob, we cannot green up the social justice parties. We cannot. I've worked with the Democrats in the United States, and I've worked with the Social Democrats in Germany, and they put on green spots in opposition and they shed them in government. We have to replace them. And I'd run into the United Tasmania Greens, the world's first Greens party, which set up on the 17th of March 1973 in the town hall in Hobart. Why? Because one of the most beautiful and inspiring places on the face of the planet, the Lake Pedder National Park, was about to be destroyed by a hydro scheme to produce an extra 26 megawatts of electricity. The average power station these days produces 1,000 to 2,000 megawatts of electricity. Lake Pedder was destroyed to give Comalco, in a secret contract, cheap electricity, 2.6% of an average power station these days, electricity, because that was development and that is development, and nothing has changed as far as the Labor Party and the Liberal Party that did that back in 1972, and the situation we are confronting with those parties here and around the planet in 2009. But Petra was an inspiration, and let me tell you that there's going to be an honorary dinner for Jack Mundy, who led the Builders Labourers Federation in Sydney, from the black bands on for working and social conditions to the new innovation of green bands, as the designers wanted to wallop the heritage of Sydney in the fast-developing boom years of the 60s and 70s. And you may remember, well, most of you perhaps won't, but some of us will remember that went in various ways, including to demolish the rocks. So next time you're in the rocks looking at those beautiful old colonial buildings, they're all going. I can remember the pictures in the paper of the 3 towers, round towers of modern architecture, which were going to replace that magnificent heritage, those sites. Some of the buildings were destroyed, but together with the residents, and most of them were working class tenants and other good-hearted citizens, the union were arrested, including Jack Mundy, and taken off to jail for getting in the way of that piece of progress which we now look back and think, isn't it fantastic these buildings are here? Well, there's a history behind it. Upriver, at the Lane Cove River at Hunters Hill, people were concerned that they were going to destroy an area of woodlands on the harbour foreshore. And so the people, not from any blue ribbon Labor era came down and saw the Builders Labourers Federation and said, we're about to have our heritage destroyed. And to cut a long story short, they got together with the people in the leafy suburb of Hunter Hill and protected that woodland as well. And so the word green ban was coined, and Petra Kelly, seeing this and meeting with Jack Mundey, and she invited him back to an international conference in Germany. They were looking for a term for the new ecological parties, which were springing up in response to the ecological crisis that it was obvious the planet was facing, and adopted from the green bans in Australia this word green, which became De Groenen, which is now marks this political movement worldwide. But right from the outset, it had 4 pillars, and those were social justice, democracy, peace, and underwriting and overriding all, ecology. Because if we destroy the planet, we destroy ourselves. And nothing so much brings that home, and you've heard me say this before, many of you, than my friend David Suzuki, who told me, sitting by the hearth at Liffey also, one evening, that he drove up to the supermarket in Vancouver, which had a big sign in the window saying animals not allowed. So he got in his car and drove off to a shop where he could go in. And it brings home to us that we are creatures of nature. And of the 70,000 billion stars scientists now estimate share this universe with us, and the consequent hundreds of thousands of billions of planets, a couple more, 30 more discovered or announced the other day. We now know 400 of them out there. Not one of them is suitable for life, as this little one is. So far as we know, this is the only little blue, because that's how it looks from space, but for us green planet, which harbours life, which harbours this intelligence that we in this mammal have, and the awareness, and the inspiration, and the creativity, and unfortunately the destructive potential that comes with that. And I'm indebted to the rest of the scientific world for this theory that it may be that when life on other planets got to this facility for thinking and changing itself, it has always imploded. Perhaps that's the explanation as to why none of them are on the phone, their cell phones, calling us up, why we can't get in contact with them. Maybe it is part of the order of this process of bringing order out of chaos, of returning to it, that you get to this stage where you have the intellect to intervene on the very thing that's cradled you into existence. In our case, this fragile but magnificent and just right biosphere on this beautiful little blue planet, and with tinkering of it, you put an end to the very thing that sustains us. Now, here is a sobering thought, and here is the challenge to we in humanity who understand in 2009, they didn't in 1909 or 1809, we do now, that this planet is in its 6th age of mass extinction, is undergoing the greatest rate of destruction of its natural fabric in all of human history, and it's accelerating, and the agent is one singular and lone entity who we all know. It's us. It's Homo sapiens. And the challenge, because there is no other hope that we can reasonably entertain, is to fix the behaviour of this remarkable but out of control creature on this fabulous planet. And there is only one agent that can fix it, and that is us. Homo sapiens itself. We are the cause, and we are the only creature, and we now know it. And yet I woke up this morning also, well, on the plane, read The Australian. There was no age in the newsagents in Hobart. To see that our Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, looks at Australia with 23 million people, looks at our resource extraction and wants us to get bigger. That is, to expand both. I noticed that Premier Bligh in Queensland yesterday has gone into a compact with two of the biggest coal mining corporations on the face of the planet in this country, which exports more coal by a country mile than any other country on the face of the planet, to be burnt elsewhere on Earth, presumably with the idea that the greenhouse gases that come out there won't hurt us. I'll write to Premier Bligh to put her straight on that. She wants to help put hundreds of millions of taxpayers' money into making Queensland's coal exports bigger and to rush out through 3 ports, now through a new interconnecting railway, which they've dubbed the Suez, S-U-E-Z, option for Queensland, so that they can export more coal faster to make more money to measurably and horrifically threaten life and ourselves on this planet. We are past the time of excusing that by saying they don't know, because they do. We can say, and I can as a doctor remember so well because I've seen it in myself so often, rationalise, but it is not acceptable. We are a human community of 6.8 billion people which has to use its collective common sense to rescue ourselves and this planet in our time. Christine Milne, who's with us tonight, I heard telling a press conference just the other day that the Arctic, scientists now tell us, is going acidic. The term they use is corrosively acidic. So besides climate change, the carbon dioxide's going into the ocean, causes carbonic acid. Did you know that? And by 2018, 9 years from now, 10% or 20% of the Arctic will be so corrosively acidic it will destroy the ecosystem that are there. Amongst other things, it melts, acidically melts the shells of shellfish, including microscopic ones, so small that you would miss them if you were swimming in the ocean, in their millions and in their billions. It is this same phenomenon. Oh, by the way, by 2050, 50% of the Arctic is expected to be corrosively acidic as things stand. And by the end of this century, that's by the time babies now, who we are predicting to live on average to more than 100 years in this country, are getting towards the end of their lives, 100% of the Arctic Ocean will be corrosively acidic. And they're expecting the same phenomenon at the other pole. That's on top of what you and I know about the onrush of climate change. So I have looked at this over the last 30 years as the Greens have grown. And we have been frequently vilified, laughed at, seen as extreme, and will do so in the future. But things are changing. We must recognise that we as Greens, and the greening of politics, is the only answer to this dilemma of the planet facing destruction by Homo sapiens. Saving the planet through the action of Homo sapiens is green. It's not a Green New Deal, that is the Green Deal. And when you get to say we are in the process through human action, there is no mystery or religiosity or any other motivation behind this except feeling good ourselves. Because if you can and we can say through our action we gave this planet another burst of life and we bequeathed a planet not only livable but one in which future human societies will be happy and secure, then we will be part of the greatest rescue from humanity, of the greatest tragedy it ever faced in our time in 2009. And if there can be anything more exciting than that, I don't know what it is. So I have people all the time saying, Bob, how do you stay optimistic? How do you stay positive with all this bad news coming in? And the answer to that is, well, we are in the business of turning that bad news around. And when you look at the alternatives, there is the political process and democracy, or there is guns. And you'll remember that two of the Greens' pillars are peace and democracy. We are sticklers for democracy. And as Winston Churchill said, it may have its faults, but it's better than whatever else comes next. And one of our jobs is to help improve our democratic system. And one of the tragedies of democracy around the world is the ownership of the information which informs the people, which prejudices the debate which a healthy democracy ought to be having. Ralph Nader, the great consumer advocate, said to the nascent Greens in 1980 that information is the gold of democracy, and that democracy is the currency of information is the currency of democracy. But we have it bought and sold. I had a chief war correspondent for an international and prestigious magazine having asked me to coffee in Hobart some months ago. And he said, I am used to reading the Northern Hemisphere press. I pick up and read about climate change in your press. I pick up the Australian with my breakfast of a morning, and I end up, instead of getting on with my boiled egg, banging my head on the desk. And why is that? Is it because editors or journalists don't understand the very simple concept I and we are talking about tonight and in this conference? That it is in our hands to turn things around and make this planet zing. And why not this country first? Well, there's a thing in the way, and that is money. And that is me now. And that is feathering the nest in some sort of belief that that will lead to future betterment. And here is a problem with capitalist society. It is my view that free enterprise is a fantastic thing. It brings us all sorts of innovation and self-fulfilment. But the role of a democratic society is to put that within the bounds of management. And we have seen, particularly since the fall of the Berlin Wall, the parameters go right the other way, so that capitalism has been unleashed to the point of the global economic crisis we've seen in the last year or two. But the problem with it is if we allow money and economics to rule instead of be the servant of an intelligent humanity, looking at what is best for it and our biosphere in general, then we will see the continue of the corrosion not only of the oceans, but of the terrestrial planet and the hopes of humanity as well. And so if you have Rupert Murdoch and other billionaires making fabulous sums of money, not only out of providing the news, because this is a very tiny subset of the media empires, but of influencing global politics. And we see that time and time again. You end up with the defrauding of democracy. You end up with a situation where indeed, where a President of the United States comes into our elected House of Representatives, and I'd sooner see you there, Adam, we get the situation where an elected representative gets up to speak to that President, as I and Kerry did, and the rules which say a stranger, i.e. the President, shall not be in the chamber, are turned around to have the elected representative put out. And then a huge tide of vilification. You'll remember Ben Oakwist, who's with us tonight, saying to me after that, "Bob, the phones are in meltdown." And time after time, I talk with Talkback Radio with the commentators saying, "You should have your face smashed in. You should be taken out of the... You are a disgrace. You are this." No, this is a democracy in which everybody is equal. And we have not only the privilege, but the responsibility to speak up. And I come back again to this point, that we will not make it unless we replace them and the Greens become a major force in the political debate of this century. We not only have to become represented in the parliaments, not only have to become the party of opposition, as the Labor Party and the social justice movement did a century ago, but we have to become the parties of government at local, provincial, national and global level. And once again, the question arises, well, what is the philosophical difference? It is this: both the big parties, with the capitalist background, are inextricably wed and bound to the idea that you must have growth. When I went to medical school, I was told that growth was something that you had to be worried about because it would eventually strangle and kill its host. Cut it out. You go across to the economics faculty and it's quite the reverse. Growth is good regardless, even though they know that it will eventually strangle the host.